Dorothy House came to Gold Scholarship with a problem. And that problem is that Dorothy House is a hospice care home that operates on the fundings that's majorly from the charity shop around Somerset. However, they do not have a young audience and a young demographic in their shop. So how can Gold Scholars help Dorothy House to find more young people?
Our idea is to host a vintage merchandise fair on campus twice a year. This will be in Refreshers and Freshers Week. The fair will sell various items of vintage clothing and merchandise, such as vinyls, which we've identified that there is a good market for in people our age, mostly students. Um, the stock for the fair would be supplied by Dorothy House themselves and may require some student volunteers to help pull together the stock that they have that would be relevant to the fair. Dorothy House also have an online store where they're looking to sell a lot of their stock. We think that we could use some student volunteers to help manage a vintage section of the store where they could pull together various vintage items of clothing and vinyls and such, and write interesting descriptions for the stock. They could also promote the stock through various very relevant channels such as the SU, and this would help keep people interested in the sort of the vintage stock and the Dorothy House throughout the year in between the fairs.
In order to help these events take place, we need to have a partnership between the SU and Dorothy House. This will help get local students involved and get them understanding of what Dorothy House has to offer them in terms of retail and products. In terms of what we need from within the partnership, from the Students' Union, we need them to help run the fairs in a similar way to how they run the vintage fairs, with the infrastructure and everything. And we also need them to provide support through their volunteer groups, such as the V Team. But we also need them to use their existing social media to help raise awareness of Dorothy House and the fairs, because they already have such a large online presence that it'll be really great to. It'll really help us get more people knowing what's going on. The charity will need to provide the existing online store so that volunteers can just help by adding to the store and improving it. And they'll also need to provide the merchandise that's to be sold.
In terms of the roles required, we will need a social media manager to help with promotion of the events, including the vintage sale on campus, which will need to be advertised through the SU channels to the freshers. Then we will require an online shop manager to list items and fulfill orders. A charity liaison officer will be required as a go-to sourcing volunteers. For the on-campus vintage sale, one-off event volunteers will be required to manage the event, and then potentially student bloggers could write on the Dorothy House website following purchase to reinforce the charity's move towards vintage clothing and targeting students. This could be through an incentive of a 20% off your next purchase if the student was to write 100 words and to perhaps model and style their new purchase in a photo.
What would we do with the 200 that will be given? Well, little to no money will be devoted to the online store since it's online and pretty free of maintenance. Most money will be devoted to the one-off fairs, setting up and transport for the merchandise and then renting the equipment. Those fairs happen twice a year, so we want to get these set up as soon as possible, once in the freshers and once in the refreshers. And on the online store, it's ongoing, so hopefully we can get the shops set up mostly during term time. So please help us if you can.